Let's talk about utter confusion. Utter, U-D-D-E-R, obviously has something to do with cows.
That's right.
Now, where did the confusion come from?
Many, many years ago, there was a political meeting in Wasilla, and we went to that, and it was open to questions and answers, and the speaker said something about, well, somebody asked him about something about Social Security, and he was from the legislature, and he says, I don't know. I stay out of that because whenever it comes up, it's nothing but utter confusion. So I poked my husband in the ribs and I says, that's the name of our dairy. Change the T's to D's. and then we used to have a sign out in front, with a cross-eyed cow and all this and that. And it became very popular for taking pictures from the tourists.
I'll bet. They had a sign along the highway near your...
Yes, right by our dairy farm, right.
Uh-huh. Now that was in Palmer, Wasilla?
Wasilla. 1957.
And that's when you started, or?
No, we came up here in 1950.
Uh-huh.
It took us 3 years to find a homestead. Then it took 3 years to develop this homestead, 160 acres, into a grade A dairy. We didn't go broke, but we got badly bit.
Well, what's utter confusion about? Is that about your experiences of not going broke and just getting bit?
Yes, it's the story of coming up the Alaska Highway in 1950 through 1968 when we went out of the dairy business. And it's about trying to make a homestead out of 160 acres with 3 little kids, no money, carry water and wood, and trying to make it, Eventually we got a loan to develop this grade A dairy. And it's the story of our experiences there.
Now, you were able to get the dairy going, and you did have a grade A dairy.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
What kind of experiences did you have that's in your book, Elverda?
Oh, I don't quite know what you mean. You mean about getting moose and all this sort of thing?
Well, sure. If you was living on a homestead,
yeah.
At that time, the late 50s, that was kind of wilderness out there, wasn't it?
It was. Uh-huh.
And so did you have moose walking through the front yard,
yes,
and ducks landing on the pond, and those kind of things?
Yes, we did. The kids, when they went to school on the school bus, they used to count at least 100 moose between our place and into Wasilla. And that was through the school bus windows, and those windows were mostly frosted in the cold winter, So they count 100, and so they must have been more than 100.
Now, how about the moose nowadays? There's more moose in Anchorage now than there was in 1957. Is there more or less moose in the Wasilla area?
Less.
Less?
Yes, less.
Maybe because more population, or?
Well, I think there's more land cleared.
Uh-huh.
In the earlier days, there was so much land cleared for dairies. At one time, there was over 100 dairies here.
I suspect that the dairies was pretty good place for the moose to join in with the cows.
No.
No?
They stayed in the woods.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Well, did you ever we have trouble with moose in Anchorage now. Did you ever have trouble with moose out there?
No, not really, because the dogs kind of kept them away.
Kept them away.
But one time I remember that there was one cow and calf kind of hanging around where the bus was when the kids got on the bus. And he got pretty bold, so one morning it got so bad that Bob would have to take his 30-06 and escort the kids to the bus. And then the kids would get on the bus, and he'd come back, and that moose was mad at that bus. And he'd chase them off bus down the road. He would do this every day until it got to be spring, and then, of course, he took off for the woods.
Now, you didn't ever open homesteader season on moose out there, did you?
Oh, yes, we did.
Oh, really? Now, has the statute of limitations gone by so you could confess and fess up to some of that?
Yep, it is. You want to hear some of it?
Yeah, tell us one.
This is homesteader season. An illegal but accepted moose hunting time was open all winter.
Uh-huh.
Homesteaders took advantage of the season to fill their freezers. I don't recall hearing of anyone shooting an animal, then wasting the meat. The Alaska Department of Fish and Game wasn't real strict during this season. We know what you're doing, just don't brag about it. Don't sell the meat, and don't leave a blood trail. Above all, don't waste the meat. We knew if they caught anyone, they'd have to, by law, prosecute. They could fine, confiscate weapons, and maybe give jail time. We needed meat, so Bob was on the lookout for a barren moose cow crossing our property. Ralph, our neighbor, was visiting us one wintry afternoon. Snow was falling heavily, and just before dusk, a big moose wandered into our garden to dig the remains of delicious turnips, cabbage, and rutabagas. Bob shot it, and the men helplessly watched it fall at the far end of the driveway near the road. The men panicked. They decided an old white tarp and the heavy falling snow would cover the moose, keeping it undetected as they harvested the meat. When the school bus came lumbering down the road, the men stopped cleaning the moose, quickly threw the tarp over it, piled snow around it, and dove for the nearby brush. When the bus continued on, the men, hidden by the dense falling snow, finished the harvesting. Ralph went home to return after dark to help Bob hang the moose in the old barn. Bob got restless and didn't wait, retrieving the moose by himself. Muscling 800 pounds of meat took his whole attention. He wrestled with the hindquarters and finally hung them from the rafters. He was preparing to hang the front quarters when Ralph and Herb drove into the yard. The men quietly approached the barn, then banged loudly on the door. "Hey, what's going on in there?" Bob turned off the light and scrambled for the door. He thought the law was after him and envisioned spending the winter in jail. He crashed into Ralph and Herb as he bolted through the door. All three laughed and went back to finish the job. They never let Bob forget the incident and laughed uproariously every time they retold it. Of course, as the years went by, the story got wilder and wilder.
Sure. But you didn't have the fishing game come and knock on your door.
No,
yeah,
no.
yeah.
We sure thought they would. It's our first experience, at that.
Yeah.
Of course.
Okay, it's been nice visiting with you.
Okay.
All right, thanks a lot. Elverda Lincoln, author of Utter Confusion.